Let's look at this idea of optimizing decision threshold. Okay, so let's try like maybe 8. Not good with numbers. Say 10 patients, and we'll go with the whole kidney thing or whatever. And let's say that we'll just kind of order the probabilities here as like this. So let's say you do some sort of score and you do your least squares and so forth, and you generate a model that here's predicted, and let's just go with like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and then we won't call it 1, we'll call it 0.99. So those are the predicted, say in our case, for this, given that we're doing this project, so predicted failure, say. So I'll put failure there. Okay, and then we could have actual, and let's say, okay, this kidney lasted 5 years, that kidney lasted 5 years, that one didn't, this one did, that one did, that one didn't, and maybe the rest of these didn't. Okay, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, okay, I got the right numbers there. So just very simply, let's say that's what we had. Now, this is what actually happened. Now, so if we set our threshold, so for instance, you might say, right, arbitrarily, maybe a good threshold is at, around 0.5, and so if we pick 0.5, and why 0.5? Well, it's halfway between 0 and 1. So if we pick 0.5 as the threshold, then what we see is, in this particular case, and we'll do another example and all that, partly because I think 0.5 is going to turn out to be the best answer here. But let's look at what we get right. Okay, so if we say that if you're below a 0.5 on the predicted failure, we're going to go ahead and let you do the kidney transplant. And so we can look at, well, how did we do? Okay, what did we get correct? And we got this one correct. Oops, I want to use a 1 there because I got it correct. We got that one correct. We got this one correct because the kidney didn't fail. We got this one wrong. We got this one correct. We got this one correct. And we got all these correct. So how did we do? Well, we got 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 correct. And, well, could we do any better, right? And, well, we could try different things, like, right, what if I set it at 0.6? Well, then, all of a sudden, at 0.6, these that were correct up here and incorrect, they're still correct and incorrect. But all of a sudden this one switches to a 0 because I didn't get that correct. If I said, oh, everybody from a 0.6 or below could have a transplant. Oh, then all of a sudden we drop to this line would give me 8 out of 10. Oh, that's probably not as good a decision there. And similarly, suppose I chose 0.4 as my line, then again, these are still correct. This one went back to correct here because it said I said, well, let's not try to do this transplant, and well, it turned out that it failed, so that would have been a good decision. And then here, though, this one all of a sudden is incorrect, and again we drop to 8 out of 10. And if I check all sorts of different levels, I see that, yeah, 9 out of 10 is the best I could do, and so my optimal threshold should probably be 0.5. Okay? Now, let's check a different set of data. We'll keep it small again. There's not a lot you can do with such a small number of data, but and just for the heck of it, we'll maybe keep these just like we did. We'll just give a different success and failure outcome for some of them. There we have our 0.99. So again, low numbers are good in this case because we're talking about the probability of failure. And so, suppose, yeah, that one didn't fail, but that one did. Didn't fail. That one did. Didn't fail, and now these did. Okay, so suppose we have those numbers, and so this is actual. And again, suppose I just started with the 0.5. What was correct here? Well, everything below this would have gotten a transplant, and so that was a good decision there. Maybe a bad decision, good, bad, bad here, bad there, and good, and good, and good. Okay, and so when I look at this one, what for the 0.5, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right. So I got 6 out of 10 correct. Now, just kind of looking at this, because I can see all the data, let's try at 0.7. So if I look at all those, okay, so now again, I got so this is the 0.5 column. Here's a 0.7 column, and let's look at what I got correct. Now there are other ways there are actually somewhat better ways to decide what this optimal threshold is, but this kind of gives the idea of what we're doing, and I think it's good enough for us at this point. So this one was correct, that one was incorrect, these were correct, and that one was incorrect here, this one, but these next two, at the 6 and the 7, they did all right, so they were correct. And then, oops, I put zeros instead of ones. They were correct. And then these last three were all correct. And so here I got 8 out of 10 right by putting the threshold at at 0.7. Okay, so now notice this is theoretically here we've got a predicted probability of failure of 0.7 or 70%. Okay, but the key is, can we use that, whether that's truly right or incorrect, in some ways doesn't matter if I can use it to do a good job in setting a threshold for my score. So we could call this, predicted probability just a score, and where do I want to set, what kind of score do you need? And here it appears you want to set the score at 0.7, not 0.5. So you see, just saying something like 0.5 or 0.4 or 0.2 or 0.1, any of those to start with is really strictly arbitrary. What we want to know is, okay, we've come up with this probability of failure, okay, and it may or may not be a great number in terms of, well, is that really the probability of failure? It may not be, it may be off by 10% or 10 percentage points or even 20 percentage points. But the key is, can you use it as a score? Can you use it as a predictor then to set a threshold, like in this case 0.7, where we can get 80% of our predictions correct, right? So if I just arbitrarily said, oh, well, 0.5, because 0.5 is in the middle, well, I would have only gotten 60% correct. But here, I got 80% correct. And, for that matter, you could say, oh, well, the probability of failure should only be maybe 30% or something. Oh, well, if I came up here and set this at 30, then I would, this first one would be correct up here, right? The 0, 1, 0, that would be correct, that would be wrong, that would be correct. But then, this is wrong. This one's correct, but these next two are wrong, and the last three are correct. And so, again, I only get 60% right. And so, it may sound good, like, oh, yeah, you only have a 30% chance of failure. Therefore, yeah, we'll do your kidney transplant. But, setting it at the 0.3, we're going to be wrong 40% of the time. Whereas if we set it at 0.7, which sounds worse, right? Because a 70% chance of failure. But as a predictive tool, we get this 80% right. That's a great thing. Now, as I said, you're typically more sophisticated, because actually what you tend to want to do is look at both your false positives and false negatives. So in other words, we could actually say setting it here at the 0.7, so that would be this set here. What we got right and wrong. Let me erase just that line so we don't really notice it in there. So we said, all these should get the transplant. And how often were we wrong on saying yes? Well, we were wrong 2 times out of 7. So, our rate there of being incorrect was 2 out of 7. But here we were never incorrect, so we were 0 out of 3 incorrect down here for where we said, oh, no, you probably shouldn't get a transplant. And so actually you could look at those numbers and work on optimizing those numbers as far as, well, or, yeah, the 2/7 was how often we were wrong, and that's, I guess, what I was talking about. But and 0 out of 3 we were wrong, 0 out of 3. So, but so you could do that. But what we're doing in our project is we're just looking at the overall correct and trying to get our best threshold for that. It's a little more straightforward. We don't have to go into as much. We can do that pretty quickly with the spreadsheet and just changing our threshold. And we're looking to get that number of successes as high as possible. Okay, so that is this notion of setting a threshold based on our model. Okay, so we have our model here that produced this. We want to compare then making decisions based on the model with our actual data, so that going ahead in the future we feel comfortable about our predictions, or at least we know how good we think our predictions are, right? And if for something like these transplants, if I could make my predictions about 95% successful, wow, that would be great. And if I can only make them 60% successful, well, that's not so good, probably, right? And so, you're really, in these models, it's kind of a twofold thing, is, okay, what seems to be most important in predicting an outcome? Okay, so we want to get that prediction, but then how do we use that predicted outcome to actually make decisions? And there we try to compare how the model did compared to actual data. And what we're hoping to find is that by setting a threshold at the right spot, then the predictive power of the model is really, really good compared to the actual data. Okay, so that is this idea of setting our threshold.